Welcome. So we had done the lunch and learn kind of show and tell for end users and what an end user's experience would be with an Aimplan solution. The purpose of this video is going to be more so related to a developer's experience. So in this case, I am trying to figure out if I can complete an entire Aimplan solution for a forecast process in less than 90 minutes. So we'll go ahead and set the timer. But in general, what we're looking to accomplish would be setting up both a forecast input table as well as a product table to edit and change the dimension of what we're forecasting. We're going to forecast at a product level, add all of the measures and scenarios, as well as status definitions. So all of the items that will occur within the portal. We'll also go through what needs to be done within Power Query, setting up those relationships, and the measures within Power BI. And then the last piece, what will the report pages look like? So we're looking to have the ability to load forecast as well as have commentary, the ability to add products if necessary, a status reference, which is going to be related to workflow. And then these two would be, if we have time, what would the forecast review page look like? And once again, if we have time, going into the gross margin review, we're going to set up maybe some structured reporting for that and using that row section feature that we had talked about during the lunch and learn. Related to the model that I'm using, this is just the AdventureWorks file. So we have a sales fact table along with territory, customer, product, date, and reseller. I've pulled in the Aimplan user table. We'll still go over what that looks like in Power Query and how that interaction is set up. But in most cases, we would have some type of template with maybe the users and measures already loaded. And then the only thing that needs to be brought in from Aimplan would be the new storage tables. And so for now, we'll have that Aimplan user loaded or preloaded into the model. Everything else is going to be new. And then we'll just go through what that looks like from a developer's perspective to pull in the detail. So if we switch over to the portal, we have our users. I'm just filtered to just the 480th team. We're going to look at measures. And we already have a forecast amount measure in here. Just for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to add a new one. We'll say AdventureWorks forecast. And we'll say this is related to training. And we'll also add an AdventureWorks omelet measure. Let's also go over, maybe we want a new category, AdventureWorks challenge. Go into scenarios. AW1. Forecast. And make sure that's open and ready to submit detail to. Add a new category in here. And now let's start with creating a table. AdventureWorks forecast. We're going to call it out as fact table. And if we go into the actual data model, we're not going to load forecast by customer or reseller. We go into territory and product. Let's see if we can load. There's 300 different products, but then there's 37 subcategories. So maybe we're going to load by subcategory from the products table, right? You're less likely to forecast at a SKU level. Maybe you have the organization or structure to forecast by product, but for the purposes of this, will be a little bit more high level forecast by subcategory, as well as maybe by region. Let's go by group. So then going back to the portal, we have the 11 standard keys. We're going to add a new one for subcategory. That's just going to be in text. .50 characters should be enough, but we'll go ahead and put that to 75. Add one more. Or we'll call this territory group. And you'll see the field names do not allow spaces, so I'm just going to override that with an underscore. We're good on both of those. We also need to hit process to make sure that these new fields have been added to the table. And if we go to create one more table, I'll call this products for AdventureWorks. And this is where we are going to replicate what is already in an Excel file. This model is currently just connected to Excel files. Let's assume that an end user is doing the same thing. They're starting off with a Power BI model just connected to Excel files. We're talking about how we could potentially move a portion of this into Aimplan. Right, so from the standpoint of Aimplan's storage table structure, we could just load that individual forecast storage table and leave the products table in Excel, or leave the current structure without needing to load the dimension table into Aimplan. This is just to move that process into Aimplan, hopefully have a little bit better control. And so we'll call this product for now for the dimension, and we can always change this. We'll say key data type is big integer. Create. And call this product key. We'll leave that as is. So it looks like the last one is 606. We've never actually used the identity seed. We're going to test that. Maybe this won't work, but why not? Call this product key. SKU. changing that to just product. And for now, we'll just keep the first three and also have model category and subcategory. We're going to add new tables for that, or new fields for that. Let's save. Just a warning saying, hey, you changed the primary keys. Audit data may be impacted. Doesn't really matter at this point because we have not loaded or accessed anything into this. So we're getting an error message. I'm going to remove these first and then see if we can get this to save without the new fields. All right. And if we go back to product key, let's go ahead and put that back to 1. Let's go ahead and start back over. Change this to product key. Hit save. Still keep this as identity. I'm going to remove the is identity. Skew. Product name, change to product. Model. Was there any other field that we wanted included? Okay, that's good for now. I'm going to try one last time on the is identity. All right, so I'm guessing it just didn't like the big integer with is identity. Should be good there now. I'm going to come into this one more time. All right, so we have our measures, we have our scenario, and we have our 2 storage tables we're going to be working on. For the forecast table, we wouldn't necessarily want to import anything or load any detail to this, but on the product side, we probably would. So for this, we're going to go into the data view of that table. I'm going to copy the entire table out of Power BI. bring that into Excel. And we're just going to include the fields that we wanted from the beginning. Save it as a CSV. All right. The additional step that we need to do for this, though, right, these are 6 categories. We go back to our portal. We need to make sure that we align on field names as well as anything else that we need to include in the upload. So you'll see there's no trash can next to created by user ID, created at, updated by, and updated at. Those are going to be standard, not something that we need to include in the import. It's going to be added to the actual records after the fact. Let's just double check that we have product key. It is case sensitive, so just making sure that the K is capitalized, SKU, product. Look at category, subcategory, and model. All right, so we should be good. Going to click the data button one more time, click import. I'm going to drag that file in. We'll hit import. All right, so this was loaded successfully. And now I'm just moving screens around. Just a minute. I think we're still good. Coming back to the portal. Just confirming that the products table is still loaded. Right. Now in Power BI, we're going to go to transform data. We see our individual dimensions just connected to an Excel file. Then our Aimplan user table is connected to a SQL database. So that's the back end of Aimplan. Navigating to our users table, Rather than duplicate this, I'm going to just recreate what you would normally do when starting from scratch. We need our Aimplan server. The individual database where our instance lives, and then connecting through direct query. If connecting to it for the first time, it's going to ask for permissions or needing to edit permissions. For the purposes of this, I've already connected to this specific instance. We're going to pull in the products as well as the 2 audit tables for now. Products and forecast, and then the 2 audit tables. Rename these. Connect to the measures table. Try this one more time through the forecast. And just from a naming convention, I tried to include AIM in the name, just to where we know which tables are associated with Aimplan. In this case, we have AIM underscore AW for AdventureWorks. Go back to our source, and we'll go to measures. And we'll filter for just AdventureWorks challenge. And then the last one, we will pull in scenarios. And same as before, just for AdventureWorks, we can always add a new forecast later. Close and apply. Go to the model view and just start a new layout. And we don't technically need a relationship with the measure key for now, or with the users. So we'll have this on here for reference, but not set up the measure for that level. within our forecast, we said we would load detail at a subcategory level. And we're also going to need a bridge table for our subcategory, just to avoid the many-to-many relationship. Same with sales territory, so slightly more intermediate than just loading it at a products view. We could technically slim this down to just be subcategory level, but for the purposes of this, let's assume we don't want to change your existing model, we just want to add to it. So if we look at just the subcategory column, removing duplicates, say this is prod subcategory bridge. We'll do the same thing on group. Just removing the hierarchy that was created. We don't necessarily need it for this. The measure key and date integer key. Another thing to note with this model or this template, the date dimension, I'm assuming that the use case or the company would have a template or already have this in place, some type of date dimension that's used across all their models. Within that, there is a integer field, so it's maybe not standard across all date dimensions that are used across all companies, but you have a date integer single key, just as well as a date integer key month end. So this was added, maybe not as standard. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But at a minimum, hopefully you have some type of integer field within your date dimension. That's what we will base our relationship off of. And scenario key being our last one. The only other thing that we potentially talk about, right, we have the original products table. Rather than continuing to use this, right, we are technically replacing that. And so let's also have a relationship between the new Aimplan dimension with the original sales. This is going to be our sales actual. So yes, this currently exists in your model. Don't necessarily want to remove it. We're just going to set up the structure to make sure that this could replace it if you wanted to fully transition to the Aimplan version of the products table. All right, so we have our tables for forecast and product. We have our measures and scenarios. Let's go ahead and knock out the last piece from the portal related to status definitions. I'm going to go to the processes group. Call this AdventureWorks sales forecast. Save. And we're just going to include, let's go ahead and add 3 new ones. So AW, call this started, AW, new, and final. Keep this consistent. It doesn't look like that I'm adding multiple sub-processes. So let's go back into process status. Review. See what happens. Go back one. So we need to go into define statuses first. And we'll call this out as status ID 4. No work done. Just to where we don't have 2 not started. Meet review and then final. if we go back into this, status. And this is where we also need a status storage table. That's why we're struggling here. Go back to storage table. We're going to create one more status. And while we're here, this is going to be at that level. Don't need to add any new column names. We're going to also add a comments table. And this is going to be at the subcategory level. Hop over to processes. And we can now save that. I can add a description in here. Adventure works. Status. All right. I think those are the main things. Have our 4 tables. Let's bring in the 2 additional tables. And now just looking for the individual statuses for that sub process. Going back to the portal. We will come back to that for now. You're setting up relationships with those new tables. And for this status storage table, let's add subcategory as well. And with direct query, it looks like the actual refresh for the new field won't come in without either changing steps within Power Query or kicking off a refresh. Hopefully we see subcategory come through. Looks like it's there. All right, so a lot going on, but hopefully this is everything that we need on the relationship and model building side. We're going to go ahead and start making some measures within the data model. So we're a little over the halfway point. And we should be starting to build report pages soon. And before we jump in a tabular editor, let's create a measures table. It's just going to be our holding ground for all of our measures. And once we hide the column name or the column in that table, it's going to jump to the top, meaning, hey, this table is only utilizing measures. We go back into tabular editor. Looks like my expression editor is showing up outside of tabular editor. There we go. And we want to do a placeholder to submit the planning value or the forecast value. So we're just looking at the sum of the Aimplan AW forecast value table. We will call this forecasted amount, forecast amount. Do the same thing for forecast comment. Based on the string value. And if we go to actuals, just putting these into different folders just to keep track of them. We'll call this good for now. And we're going to start with a placeholder. This is going to be market product. Forecast. Starting with a couple slicers on the page. And let's say that they do this on a subcategory level first, but then want to be able to split it by territory group. So we'll use the Aimplan dimension for product. And we'll start with just bikes. We'll go with mountain bikes. And we can do another iteration that maybe it's for a different type of end user. But for now, let's go ahead and add in our Aimplan table. So if you don't have the visuals in there, it's just going to the custom visuals. We'll type in Aimplan. Here are 4 options. Just click to load. And we don't see anything coming through on the edit button yet. We need to add our key fields first. Start with product key. This is going to be another one that will kind of go on the fly related to those bridge tables. But I know we at least need our date and scenarios. And then also have sales territory. Let's also add a users measure. I believe this is what we need. We basically need to return our user key, and I'm going to return the user key based on user principal looking up in the email field. Save that. All right. So this is where we're getting a visual error related to maximum number of rows. There is a way to override this, but rather than override that, we're going to utilize a modeling technique. Basically, this is saying whenever you're loading into a SQL database or into the Aimplan environment, the key fields will cross-join against each other. And with that, it's very dependent on do you need that level of granularity for that specific key? And so for this, the normal workaround is saying with that date integer key, right? If we don't have any filters on the page for date, let's go ahead and try to just filter for a single year and see if that removes the error. But we're still going to talk through the workaround after this. right? So even if I have a filter on year, we change, or if we add month, let's see if that removes it. All right, so it looks like when we're filtered for an individual month, that removes the 30,000 cross join output, rather than limiting it to just a single month, right? It's not feasible or not going to be practical for a forecast team to constantly change drop downs to look at, oh, I just want the month of April, I'm going to forecast that, and then I'm going to change the drop down to May, change it to June, and so forth. So what this cross join is doing is saying how many different combinations of the key fields can there be with date integer single. There's 2,192, but since we are filtered for 2025, right, there are now just the 365 unique options or distinct values. If we look at sales territory and group, we're saying 4 distinct values. Within our products table, and usually what I'll do with this, since it is direct query, we can't really see that. I'll usually make a copy just from a developer perspective to see this as import mode if I ever need to look at that table. And then after I've done all of my development for the report, I'll just toggle that back to disable the load to where it's not included in the actual data model as a materialized table. But for this, we have, looks like 37 different distinct values. So we said group. Let's test this. I'm going to pull Excel over. Subcategory. 8. And scenario. So right now there's only one scenario. Chances are there's going to be at least 12 if you talk about a monthly forecast process. 37 subcategories, 4 groups, and right now we have 365 on the date field. And so you see we're at that 650,000 different combinations. We change scenario down to 1, which is what we're currently seeing. It's technically only 54,000. With that, we still want to get below the 30,000 mark. And so rather than 365, right, we're not going to forecast on a daily basis. We're going to forecast on an individual month. And so with that, we're going to utilize that other integer key field. So we have date integer key single. This is going to be a 1-to-1 on the date field. Rather than that, we're going to use the date integer key month end field, which just has 12 distinct values or unique values. So we're going to take that key off and add the individual month integer key, and we now see that this is coming through accurately. We don't need a slicer for a month. But we now have our, and this is 1824. Let's see how that stacks up. The other thing, we have a slicer on subcategory. So that is now just a single product group category, product subcategory. Should be 12 months. One scenario. Let's see how we're getting to the 1824. Let me double check on group. So this may still be including all the subcategories. I'm not 100% sure on where that 1824 is coming through. Let's see if we can see once we have detail on here, I'll reconcile where the 1824 is specifically. But some combination of those four fields is getting to that 1824. We'll debug that a little later. But we want to forecast on a group level for this specific subcategory. We're going to bring in both the forecast amount and forecast comment. Add a new row section, territory group. New column section, forecast. We could use the key fields. I'd much rather use our normal month names than integer to reference what we're forecasting. I'm going to start with both of these. We want forecast amount to be editable. But before we do anything, we need to make sure that we have authentication set up. And a target table. So in this case, we're writing back to the AdventureWorks _ forecast. We're going to say allow editing. We don't necessarily need live edit. Refresh after a save. And we see that mandatory key fields are missing. This is just saying we need to make sure that the key field in here ties to the actual naming convention in the storage table. All right, so we have territory group and product subcategory. All right, so we now have all our keys. We have a target table set up. We renamed group, so I'm just going to include that there. And the ability to toggle on editable is now included. We don't have measure key in the key fields, and that's because we're going to define exactly which place to load this input. And for this, we want AdventureWorks forecast. Need to change forecast comment to string. And Now let's see what we have. I want to duplicate, not delete. So going back in. And I'm just creating two separate sections. One for comments. On the comments, we don't need month name. And on forecast amount, we don't need the comments grouping. Let's see if we have a month abbreviation instead of month name. And affixed with the forecast amount. Fixed with for commenting. All right. So we have our individual territory groups for mountain bikes. We're submitting it to product forecast and we're just looking at 2025. We now have the ability to submit this detail. Normally I would do prior year sales. Right. The AdventureWorks information looks like 2016 to 2017 to 2020. We're going to come up with a new reference point for a suggested value. And we'll say 2018 sales. With this, I might even need to update my date table because I don't know that it goes that far back. We could do like a push forward or roll forward of the AdventureWorks detail, but rather than messing with that, I'm just going to edit our date table. We're at the 21-minute mark. We will see how far we get. We may not get to the review page or the gross margin review, but hopefully we can knock out these first two. Remove the section header, that's not needed. And then for our input value, let's add in the measure we just put there. 2018 sales. We'll have our total as well. Let's have the total before. Right. So it doesn't look like potentially anything was in 2018. We might need to make a couple of edits, but for now, let's go ahead and add some sales. Mountain bikes, road bikes. Let's go back to mountain bikes. Split that evenly. We're going to hit save. And we've loaded our first forecast. Looks like everything came through as expected. There are no errors. It's good. Bump that up to that. But let's also change our scale to be in thousands. We switch over to road bikes. Let's say we're going to be a little bit more granular and load it at the individual group level. 1,000. Since we changed it to thousands, I'm going to lower that. Hit save. Let's also see if we have our comments coming through as expected. Increase in Eastern US. We hit save. Refresh our visuals, and as this is published to the service, it's going to be a slightly different interaction than what we see in desktop. But in this case, we've submitted a forecast for 2 of the subcategories. Let's go back to our products table. We already loaded for bikes. Maybe we load for clothing next. We're going to do jerseys and shorts. And on the shorts, right, so I think we have 4 subcategories that have been loaded. Just going to test that. Yeah. So we have our 4 submissions coming through based on that Aimplan table. We've now knocked out forecast upload with comments. Let's even see if we can see forecast comments as well. And then maybe we also want to have general comments. I think we said we'd load these at a subcategory level. All right, so that came through. It's tied to the short subcategory. We refresh visuals. Hopefully this comes through. Yep. And so when caps is selected, it's not showing up. Once shorts is selected, we see that general comment. And we're going to try to tackle product update and status reference in the last 12 minutes. So we'll name this to validation. Duplicate, call this products. Data input table. AdventureWorks products. And current user key. We do not need to have all of these fields. For now, let's keep this as is. So 606 was our last product key. Ideally, this comes through as an auto increment. We're going to test the waters with that. And we'll say this is a new subcategory and a new SKU. It looks like there's some naming convention to have, like helmet was HL. Then some type of coding in there and maybe the color. We're going to just have this be random numbers. And we'll call this a widget test product. Widgets subcategory CG widget 1, 2, 3. We hit save. All right, so 607. That's coming through as expected. Let's double check if our new category is added. All right, I see widgets there. What did we put on our subcategory? Widget subcategory. All right, so just slight delay. Looks like it came through on category, it came through on subcategory. And now if we go back to our forecast, our widget subcategory exists. So what's the use case for this? We're saying you have a sales team that's providing forecast to your group. Maybe it's the finance team, and the finance team needs to collect all this information from the sales team, but the sales team is aware of new products that are going to become available next year. Maybe it's an entirely new category, entirely new subcategory, and they want to be able to forecast it as they come into this tool, and they don't want to have to reach out to the finance team and say, hey, get this incorporated into the report. They want to have that autonomy to go into a table, click an add button. With that control in place for the auto increment, they don't need to know what the product key is. They technically don't even need to know the SKU, right? You could leave that blank. We're forecasting at a subcategory level. So just making sure that there is something in place to tie this new forecast to. And so in relation to what we just did, they now have added a new subcategory. They click save. On the service, they're not going to actually need to click refresh visuals. It would just come through. Right, so go back into subcategory, select the one you just added, and then they are free to add in their new forecasts. Maybe it's not going to start having sales until June. A little bit of a ramp up, and then something like that. And we'll just evenly allocate it to start. Say North America is going to be a little bit more. Hit save. We go back to the validation page and refresh visuals. Let's make sure that we have an error on this page or not. I'm going to try that one more time. And we'll go back into the portal, see if we can debug this in the last 4 minutes. And I think we figured out our problem. Let's double check what the bridge table looks like. Yeah, so that's referencing the old products table. Let's see if we can get this to work. And there we go. So the bridge table definitely adds a layer of complexity, but overall, as long as you have kind of a clean break, it would be a little bit more obvious since we still have both tables in there. There's just one other thing for me to check as we were loading this process, but we're at the 2-minute mark. Let's see if we can maybe do something with status. I'll try to get this in at the very end. And we need a status measure as well as a subprocess key. Okay. So my guess is I need to pull in the detail related to the sub process. And for now, I will make another video for maybe enhancements to this model. But workflow is definitely nice to have, not necessarily required. I'm fairly happy with this kind of off the cuff version of building a forecast model. We could definitely build additional forecast review pages, maybe another page for gross margin. I think for this session, we're going to call it good with completing all of these in under an hour and a half. And then maybe I'll do another session for these pieces as well as further enhancements to what we've done for this specific forecast upload. But thank you for staying with us this long, and let us know if you have any questions.